Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to our channel, and thanks for logging on. Today, we're discussing a dive watch with character, sophistication. It's got real style as well as no-nonsense tool watch credentials. This is the Seiko Prospex 200-meter spring drive GMT, a combination of titanium, ceramic, and Seiko's unique spring drive technology. This dive watch can be seen and purchased on our website. Subscribe to our YouTube channel if you enjoy these videos, and please click on the card in the upper right-hand corner of the screen at any time during this video to see our full sales listing for this watch, with additional accessories included in the sale, high-resolution images for your desktop, and naturally complete pricing details for this Seiko Prospex 200-meter spring drive GMT. This is the SBDB17 for those keeping score, and it does a remarkable impression of a top-of-the-line Grand Seiko diver with very few compromises in the process. First of all, the watch looks the part. It's big, it's burly, it has impressive wrist stance, and in terms of legibility, there's simply no two ways about it. You can see this watch easily day or night. Stick to the video, by the way, at the end for a loom shot when the video concludes. But you can see the style of the watch is actually remarkably charming in that there's a lot of character lines, differential finish, sharp creases, and nuances to break up the mass of the metal, at least the visual mass, because this 45mm round watch is very light on the wrist. Now let's talk about size. My wrist is 16 centimeters in circumference, and I've actually changed my camera angle and my camera distance a bit to give you a better sense of the watch on my arm as a whole. So proportionally, you see it is immense. 45 is not including the crown, which is thoughtfully set at 4 o'clock. More of that in a moment. The watch is not as thick as I expected. It appeared to tower, but at 15.3 millimeters thick, objectively, it's not as thick as something like a Rolex Deep Sea, which pushes 18. The watch is relatively compact across the wrist for a number of reasons. First, let's talk about the bare measurement, which is 54.3 millimeters, but I also want to emphasize that the watch has a unique stance, and because the lugs are actually underslung, the pivot point of the bracelet, and we'll open this up so you can see it better, uses triggers, not a clamshell, although it has that as well. But you can see how the pivot point of the bracelet is actually inboard of the outermost measurement. So though it's just over 54 lug to lug, the actual pivot point between the centers of the links is closer to 52.5 millimeters apart across the wrist. You'll also know that the lugs are very short and stumpy, and they actually have a little bit of a downturned profile to them. So you can see how this watch, once again we'll talk about a profile shot across my wrist, it really doesn't overwhelm. This is a watch that sits securely, that fits right. The style is big, there's no getting around that, but in terms of security and proportion on the wrist, it's no worse than something like an Audemars Piguet Royal Oak Offshore 44, except I can't wear that. I can wear this. So this is a big watch that's friendly for small wrists. How small? Well, in my learned opinion, based on my experience with this piece, I'd say you could probably wear this watch with security on a wrist as small as 14.5 centimeters in circumference, but 15 in circumference is probably the smallest you'd want to go. If you think the watch looks a little bit ungainly because of its size, this would dwarf a 14.5. I think 15 is as low as you want to go to avoid a comical appearance. That said, it is very light, about 146 grams. This is a watch that is almost like a feather once you put it on the wrist. At first glance, I thought this was a steel watch. Upon picking it up, I was surprised. And upon placing it on my wrist, I was impressed. And that's because the bracelet is very comfortable. You can see it has plenty of channels to allow the wrist to aerate on a hot day. This is always important to me with a sports watch. But you'll also note how there are scalloped portions, a bigger cutaway between the individual links than may otherwise be necessary. The point is to avoid pinching skin or pulling hair. The bracelet's fairly impressive as these things go. Considering the price of the watch, the fact that it does have an extension built into it is impressive for use over a wetsuit. It also has incremental adjustment via sizing holes, so it has both. It also has, again, in terms of doubling up your security or doubling up your peace of mind, it has both a clamshell and triggers. This is not going to pop open. It is steadfastly secure. Now, of course, because of the price point, some compromises are made. The use of pins and sleeves, however, to size the bracelet is really the only one. But you'll note each individual link removable for micrometric sizing. You're going to get a good fit with this watch. I mentioned that the case has a lot of character, and it does. You'll note that Seiko went to great lengths to break up the profile. You could see the polished and somewhat angled caseband. It has a little bit of a reversal to it in that at the midpoint it tucks in towards the top and tucks in towards the bottom. It has a sharp double conical profile that's smart on its own, but in combination with the stepped lugs gives this watch a unique lateral aesthetic. I would say that Seiko effectively breaks up the appearance of a massive watch by adding sharpness to the clefts. It doesn't have that large, bosomy, rounded profile that something more lumpy in profile would perhaps assume given the sheer span of the watch across the wrist. It appears sharp, razor-like, creased, and elegant. Of course, the use of satin as well as polish also helps to break up the appearance of masses of metal. Now here's a surprise. This bezel, which is actually held on via screws, Breitling style, so thus very securely planted rather than snapped on, this bezel is ceramic. Now many Grand Seiko watches of recent years, especially in the dive category, have used bezels that were either anodized or ADLC or lacquered. The use of nearly indelible ceramic here is impressive. Even more impressive is the fact that, like the case with its satin and polish, you can see that there's a double finish to the bezel with polished on the knurled edges, which by the way are an absolute pleasure to grip, and a satin finish along the caseband. There's actually a lip along the flank that has a satin finish that contrasts with the inner race, the tops, and the flanks. More nuanced than I expect, especially since there are not one, but two different types of profiling on the flanks of the bezel. That's giving you more for your money. Now the bezel action is like many Grand Seiko divers, which is to say, it's a little bit more refined. It has a highly audible detent, and it has a grit to it rather than a strong individual detent feeling. It's kind of the opposite of an Omega or a Rolex dive bezel. It feels more like a Blancpain 50 Fathoms or its Grand Seiko brethren. The dial is simple. It's not the high artistry that you get on something like a Grand Seiko, but it is immensely legible. You have a power reserve scale for the 72-hour reserve de marche, a nicely hidden date between 4 and 5 on a monotone date disc. You have a 24-hour GMT hand that circulates in one cycle per calendar day, so a half-speed hand. Then you have your local time at center. Now you'll note that the seconds hand is loomed, and this is a dial that, again, wait for the end of the video, but does not disappoint when night falls. I do want to emphasize that you set it in two different modes. First, hacking or stop seconds, it has that functionality. Then there's an intermediate position for the crown, so you can actually change the time in hourly increments, and you'll note you can drive the date forward or backwards if you're traveling across the international date line. Here the watch does not stop running. The manufacturer caliber 5R66 is designed to let you travel without impeding chronometric precision, and as a spring drive you will note it is a continuously smooth sweep. There are no steps. Spring drive, a fascinating electromechanical hybrid that combines most of the precision of a quartz with the watchmaker manufactured mechanical soul of a traditional automatic. In this case, it is an automatic. It is watchmaker assembled, regulated, and again, it is something that is uniquely Seiko. They invented this technology. They spent decades perfecting it. First conceived in 1977, it wasn't until 2005 that an automatic version was available. That's how special this is. And how accurate can this system be? Well, despite being powered entirely by the spring energy, there is no battery. The watch is able to attain precision of approximately plus or minus 15 seconds a month. So while the company only claims plus or minus 1 second per day, if you're averaging out 15 seconds gained or lost per month, you realize that over time it's even more accurate than it is over a 24-hour cycle. Very impressive. 200 meters water resistant. It's underneath a solid case back, so no, sadly you can't see the movement, but that said, you can see the product and the continuously sweep second hand. The continuously sweeping smooth action of the seconds hand is a signature of Seiko and Grand Seiko's spring drive, emblematic of the brand and its technological innovation. Now, of course, the crown is a little bit unusual, but it's also practical. It's set off center so that if you do have a meatier wrist with a little bit more padding than mine, there's not going to be any sense that your wrist is getting dug up by a crown and a crown guard. By moving it off center, the need for the crown guard is also eliminated as the caseband and the lug protects the crown from impact. Handsome, arguably the best Grand Seiko you can buy within the Seiko line. This is a watch that punches above its weight. It bears comparisons to its big brothers and the best of Swiss watchmaking rather than other watches in its price point. See it and find out why on our website. Alright, Seiko Prospex 200-meter spring drive diver. This is the SBDB17. Now you can't see its 45mm titanium bulk in the dark, but you can easily see seconds, hours, minutes, and the luminescent pearl of the bezel glowing like a torch, proving you get your money's worth with this Seiko, lights on or off. See it and own it on our website.